Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings MLB video for Tuesday, June 21st. We got a large 15-game slate with every team on tap tonight, so we're going to get right into it. We got a lot to talk about. What we like to do here in the Benny's Bat section is we're going to go through each pitcher that's on the mound, figure out what their weaknesses are, and then figure out which bat's profile to do the best against them. So let's start right at the top with the Colorado Rockies against the New York Yankees. Chad Bettis, the right-hander on the mound for Colorado. Left-handed bats hitting 285 against him. Right-handed bats hitting 304. So I guess you can say he's a little bit of a reverse splits guy, but basically guys have been hitting him from both sides of the plate. The right-handed bats do have a higher average and more home runs over the last 3 years, so any of the righties are going to be in play. But like I said, lefties are also hitting them pretty well, so it's not like you can only use one or the other. Now, he's been bad both at home and away, so he's not one of the better pitchers that we have on that Rocky staff. There are a couple guys who have, really big splits where they pitch well on the road and they pitch, pretty horribly at home because of their ballpark, but Bettis is not one of those guys. He's been bad on the road and bad at home. So I do think you can look at some of the Yankee bats today. Carlos Beltran, probably my favorite. 357 WOBA, 217 ISO score for him since the start of last season. Has a little bit of pop, going to be batting from the left side at Yankee Stadium, something we always like to see for home run power. Brian McCann kind of broke out of his slump a little bit. Another lefty at Yankee Stadium, hit 2 home runs in his last game for the Yankees, including one in the 9th inning that helped me win some money, so I owe him one there. Guys like Ellsbury and Gardner, I think, are okay options as well, but Beltran and McCann are really my favorite too. If you're stacking them up, though, I can't see you not stacking them up with Ellsbury and Gardner, along with Beltran and McCann. On the other side of this game, Ivan Nova is pitching. Normally, left-handed bats are the way to attack him, but for some reason this year, right-handed bats are hitting it for a very high average against them. He does have a low fly ball rate, not a guy that gives up a ton of home runs, but I do think we want to look at some guys on the Rockies, especially some of the lefties, Cargo and Blackman, 2 in particular that I think are in play. Cargo, 412 WOBA, 303 ISO against right-handed pitching. He's always hit righties well. Blackman, 356, 180, another guy that's solid from the top of the order there. And then the guy who I think I like the most in this game is probably Nolan Arenado. 386 WOBA, 308 ISO. Very good in righty-on-righty situations. Like we said, Nova's been getting hit around by the righties this year. So I think Arenado kind of stands out as the guy who's in the best spot for him. Next game I want to talk about, San Diego at Baltimore. Tyler Wilson on the mound for Baltimore. He's been okay this year, actually. A little bit tougher on right-handed bats. 232 average against them. Lefties hit him a little better, but since San Diego is mostly right-handed, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to look at what he does against lefties. The 2 guys that I am kind of looking at on San Diego, Will Myers has been on fire lately. He's hitting righties, he's hitting lefties, he's basically hitting everybody. Has his WOBA up to 344, his ISO score up to 220. He's definitely somebody that I think you should consider. The other guy would be Yangervis Solarte. 327 WOBA for him, 161 ISO. Left-handed bat, he's a switch hitter, so he'll be batting from the left side. Those are the 2 guys that I'd really look at on that San Diego team. Moving on to Luis Perdomo pitching for San Diego. Left-handed bats are hitting 347 against them. Right-handed bats are hitting 391 against them. He does have a low fly ball percentage, but it is in limited innings. I think a guy like Chris Davis is definitely the best play here. 395 WOBA, 321 ISO. Big left-handed power bat. Definitely want to have some exposure to him. Games in Baltimore, good hitters ballpark. Really like Davis today. I also think because of how bad Perdomo is, you can look at all those right-handed guys too. You got guys like Trumbo, Adam Jones, Matt Waiters. There's still no Manny Machado. He's still serving his suspension, but those other guys that we just mentioned, I definitely think are all in good spots here today. I expect Baltimore to put up some runs against Perdomo. Next game we can look at, we got San Francisco at Pittsburgh. Johnny Cueto on the mound, and Cueto's been lights out to right-handed bats this year, so I don't want to look at too many of the right-handed bats, if any, on that Pittsburgh team. There are 1 or 2 guys that stand out. Left-handed bats have really been the way to get them. They're hitting about a 252 against them, which is much higher than the 200 average that righties have. Andrew McCutchen has actually been pretty good in his lifetime against Johnny Cueto. He's a 359, 190 WOBA and ISO guy against right-handed pitching since 2015, but he's 18 of 62 lifetime against Cueto with 4 home runs. So those are some pretty solid numbers. I also like Young Ho Kong, 368 Woba, 197 ISO for him. A lot of power, even in righty on righty situations. And then the one guy who kind of profiles well is Gregory Polanco. You put the left-handed bat. Left-handers do better against Cueto. You know, he's the only other guy that I'd really be looking at on the Pittsburgh team. I do like Cueto. He is a good pitcher. He's been very solid this year. So I'm not looking at him to be one of the guys that gets lit up. He's definitely not somebody I want to, you know, actively target a lot of bats against. But I wouldn't be upset about using one or two of those Pirates guys in the tournament. On the other side of this game, Wilfredo Bascon. Yeah, I've never heard of him either. He's a guy who's going to be making a start today. He's a relief pitcher making a spot start. I mean, I can't see him going maybe more than 4 or 5 innings before they bring in the bullpen here. So I think you can look at all these left-handed bats in the Giants. A guy like Joe Panic makes some sense to me, maybe a Brandon Belt. You know, if you want to look at right-handed bats, just be careful with Posey. I think something happened where I think he tweaked something yesterday. I don't even have all the details, so I don't want to give you guys the wrong information. But just check and make sure that he's in the game and that he's feeling good before you roll him out there. You know, it's not the best hitter's park. You know, San Francisco got blanked yesterday, a 1-0 game. You know, pitcher's duel between Jeff Locke and Madison Bumgarner. So, you know, not really looking to use a ton of these bats either. Next game up, we got Arizona traveling to Toronto to visit Toronto in the Rogers Center. Marco Estrada on the mound for Toronto, and his numbers look pretty good. I mean, he's got a low batting average allowed to both left and right-handed bats. He does have a high fly ball rate, which is something that I'm a little concerned about, but the fly ball to home run ratio isn't all that bad, so he has been able to keep it in the ballpark. Left-handed bats do a little bit better against him, so I'm not really actively looking to take a lot of bats against him, but guys like David Peralta, guys at the catcher spot like a Chris Herman, a guy like a Jake Lamb playing third base, I think all of these left-handed bats are in pretty decent spots here. And then I still think you got to look at a guy like Goldie, even though it's a righty-on-righty matchup. You know, Goldie does very well in righty-on-righty matchups, has a ton of power. He's up in Toronto, a place where power tends to play pretty well. So I do like Goldie in this matchup as well. Then on the other side of this game, we got a left-handed pitcher in Patrick Corbin. Right-handed bats hitting 282 against them. They have 12 home runs in 66 innings pitched. So, you know, Josh Donaldson, 416 WOBA, 296 ISO, absolutely owns left-handed pitching. Definitely in play for me today. Edwin Encarnacion, who's been red hot. 392 WOBA for him, 281 ISO. Joey Batista, Russ Martin. You know, there's a lot of these big right-handed bats in this Toronto team. I think all of them make a little bit of sense, and all of them are in a pretty good spot here. Next game we're going to talk about, we got Atlanta against Miami. Jose Fernandez on the mound. He's been a big stud at home. He's a big favorite here today. You know, huge strikeout upside with this guy. Very good pitcher. If you're going to do anything, you probably want to take the left-handed bats. You know, Malik Smith leading off with some stolen base upside. You know, Freeman, 380 WOBA, 234 ISO. But honestly, I'm not really looking to take any bats against Jose Fernandez. One of the better pitchers on the mound today. He's been pretty lights out so far this year. And this Atlanta team, even though they do have a whole bunch of lefties up at the top of the order now, they're just not a very good hitting team. On the other side of this game, we got Bud Norris, the righty from Atlanta. Left-handed bats have been the way to go after him. Higher average, higher fly ball rate, more home runs. But right-handed bats have been okay too. So I do think everybody's in play, and I think this is a game you can stack up. I'm not a believer in that run of good starts that you know, Bud Norris had in his last couple games. I think Derek Dietrich is probably one of my favorite bats here today. You got 374 WOBA for him, 199 ISO score. You know, hits right-handed pitching very well. Probably be leading off at the top of the order. So really like Dietrich. Going to have him in a lot of rosters. Also really like Christian Yelich. Yelich more of a cash game play. This guy does not steal bases. He does not have home run upside. But he does have a 370 WOBA, 155 ISO, a batting average over 300. And he can pound out multiple hits and grab you an RBI or a run scored. The last guy, somebody who does have a little bit of upside, is Justin Bour. Pretty cheap first base option, 359 WOBA, 249 ISO score. Hits right-handed pitching pretty well. You know, again, Miami not the easiest park to hit a home run out of, but Bud Norris, in my opinion, is not a very good pitcher, and I do want to attack him with as many left-handed bats on Miami as I feel are in good spots. Next game we can look at, we got the Chicago White Sox going up against the Boston Red Sox. Chris Sale is on the mound, and he's pretty cheap on DraftKings, only 8,700. Right-handed bats have have shown better power against them. but he's got about a 215 batting average to both left and right-handed bats. Now, there's an argument that's going on right now where Chris Sale and the pitching coach has asked him to pitch a little more to contact, which kind of hurts his fantasy numbers because this was a guy who used to go out there and get us double-digit strikeouts. And it seems that early in the game, he's, basically just trying to, throw the ball over the plate, keep guys a little bit off balance, and, kind of rear up the strikeouts a little bit later on in the game. But it's also been affecting his fantasy scores. He's had a couple games this year that were pretty bad, whereas he used to be a guy that was consistently giving us, 20 to 30 fantasy points because he was consistently going 7 innings, consistently striking out 10 batters. And then, if he gave up a run or two here, got tagged by a righty for a home run or something, which is usually the way people got after him. That was basically something that you could stomach because he was getting you the 10 strikeouts and the 7 innings. Now he's still going 7 or 8 innings, but he's only getting you like 6 or 7 strikeouts. So, I think the fact that his price has dropped makes him a lot more interesting. Now, he does have a tough matchup. I mean, Boston is one of the better offenses in the league. You got guys like Xander Bogaerts, 402 WOBA, 125 ISO against left-handed pitching. He's 5 of 10 lifetime with the home run against Sale. So, he's somebody to watch out for. Mookie Betts at the top of the order is 3 for 7 lifetime against Sale. And even David Ortiz. Sale's usually very tough on lefties. Ortiz is 5 of 13 lifetime against Chris Sale. So you got 3 guys up there at the top of that Red Sox order that, have hit Sale well and performed well against him in the past. That sometimes when a DK algorithm looks like it's giving you a gift, like Chris Sale at 8,700, they've been pretty good with some of these guys that we've all said, oh, man, he's really mispriced on DraftKings today. And then the guy goes out and winds up throwing up a -5 or a -10. So I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here with Sale today. I'm just saying what has happened in the past. The algorithm's pretty smart, and it's been right more often than it's been wrong. So before you go out there and have 100% Sale exposure, just kind of keep that in mind. Next guy we're going to talk about on the other side of this game, we got Clay Buchholz, $4,900 for him. Left-handed bats hitting 317 with a high fly ball rate, but they do have a low home run rate, so those fly balls haven't really converted into home runs yet. Looking at this team on the White Sox, I mean, Adam Eaton's a left-handed bat. I guess Melky Cabrera is a switch hitter, so you can get him from the left side. That's really the only left-handed bats they have here. The one right-handed bat I look at, Jose Abreu, we talk about, he's somebody who's starting to play a lot better. His, numbers at the plate have looked good over the last week or two. And he's somebody that does well in righty-on-righty situations. So he would be the only other guy I'd really be looking at here. Next game we can talk about, we got Kansas City against the New York Mets. Noah Syndergaard on the mound for the Mets. He's been lights out versus right-handed bats. Lefties hitting about 259 against them. Low fly ball rate, low home run rate for Syndergaard. Doesn't give up a lot of bombs. KC is a patient team, so he may only go 6 or 7 innings here. They may make him work for it, get the count up there a little bit, maybe draw a couple walks. Eric Hosmer, the one guy who I do kind of like, 387 WOBA, 189 ISO score for Hosmer. This game is in Citi Field. It's not a place a lot of runs are usually scored. Syndergaard's a very good pitcher. I just really don't see any reason to take a lot of Kansas City bats today. On the other side of this game, we got Ian Kennedy. Left and right-handed batters hit about equal against him. He does have a big fly ball ratio. It does give up a bunch of home runs. I really like the Mets outfielders today. You got guys like Granderson, 372 WOBA, 231 ISO. Cespedes, even though it's righty on righty, 376 WOBA, 265 ISO. And then even if you want to go down towards the bottom of the order, Conforto's been batting like 7th or 6th or 8th in the order. But again, 369 WOBA, 265 ISO. He was their best hitter early in the season against right-handed pitching. So I think any of those guys with a little bit of home run pop are in play. Probably would only use them as one-offs, though. I'm not going to be stacking up the Mets. I don't think they're going to put up 10 runs against Ian Kennedy today. I consider this to be probably a low-scoring game that's going to be coming off. Next game, we can talk about Seattle at Detroit. Justin Verlander on the mound for Detroit. He's been great in 2016. Right-handed bats do have a higher average, more home runs, higher fly ball rate against them over the last 3 years. So I guess that probably puts a guy like, Nelson Cruz a little more in play than it does a guy like Robinson Cano. Both of them actually have some bad BVP against Verlander, not only recently, but even dating back to, when Verlander was an absolute stud. So I'm not really in love with the Seattle offense today. The one guy that I do kind of like a little bit is Kyle Seager, 5-for-9 lifetime with a home run against Verlander. You know, he's a lefty who hits well against right-handed pitching, so he kind of profiles as somebody that I think you can look at. I think he had a home run yesterday, you know, in that like 8-7 game or whatever that one ended up. So I do like Seager a little bit. I definitely think he's in play. On the other side of this game, we got James Paxton, the lefty for Seattle. This guy's a prospect for them. You know, right-handed bats have hit a little bit of a higher average against them. After a rocky start or two, though, he's looked pretty good in his last couple. My problem here is that he goes up against a Detroit team that's all right-handed, so there's a lot of guys that can knock him around. V-Mart, Kinsler, Castellanos, Miggy. You know, I think all these guys are in play. I think you got to look at Justin Upton. 2 home runs yesterday. He's, you know, obviously swinging the bat a lot better than he was earlier in the year. So he's another guy that I think you can put in there. I think there's a lot of good bats on Detroit, a lot of good right-handed bats to go up against the lefty in Paxton, so I don't think it's going to be an easy spot for Paxton at all. Next game I want to talk about, Tampa Bay against Cleveland. Probably my favorite pitcher on the mound today. And, you know, I'm interested. I always read the On the Bump article that Josh Kalachi puts out when he puts it out today. And I'm interested in his thoughts on Kluber here today. You know, Kluber's been very tough on right-handed bats. Left-handed bats do okay against him, but, you know, there really aren't any left-handed bats in this Tampa Bay team. Tampa Bay's lineup is pretty much all right-handed. They have a high K percentage against right-handed pitching, and they do not hit right-handed pitching well. So you put a guy like Kluber, who's already a high strikeout guy that's tough on right-handed pitchers, against right-handed batters, against a team that struggles with right-handed pitchers and strikes out a lot against them. I mean, I think this could be a monster game for Kluber. So I don't have anybody on this Tampa Bay team on my short list. You know, some people have mentioned Corey Dickerson, who's the one left-handed bat they have, but Corey Dickerson's been garbage this year. He hasn't really done anything. Has a little bit of power upside, but, you know, hasn't been consistent enough for me to want to roll him out there in cash. If you want to roll him out there in tournaments, I guess there's, you know, some merit to doing so. He is the guy that profiles the best on the numbers, but, you know, like I said, he's just not a guy that I enjoy or like rolling out there. On the other side of this game for Tampa Bay, they got their one of their young pitching prospects, Blake Snell, is going to be on the mound for them today. Snell's a lefty. This is his 3rd major league start. He's probably not going to be going deep into this game, and there are a couple guys on Cleveland that like to see a left-handed pitcher on the mound. You're very likely going to get Rajai Davis up on top of the order. If Rajai Davis gets on, Rajai Davis is stealing bases. It's kind of what he does. He's been able to put up some good fantasy numbers because if he gets a hit or two, you know, maybe he gets a double, a single, a stolen base, a run or two scored, an RBI. Next thing you know, Rajai Davis has 20 fantasy points. When he was in the 3Ks, I used to love it. When he's up now almost to 5K, I didn't look at his price this morning. I actually didn't look at it when I was going through. You know, but if he's up closer to 5K, I don't love him as much. When he was down there at 37, 38, 34, you know, he was a great play with the stolen base upside that he has. I also think we can look at Mike Napoli. 381 WOBA, 262 ISO for him. Napoli does very well in those situations where, you know, he has a left-handed pitcher on the mound. He has a power bat for them. He's batting cleanup, so he could knock in a couple RBIs. Francisco Lindor, got to mention him again, hit another home run yesterday, is just having an amazing year. 375 WOBA, 177 ISO score for Lindor. You know, very, very good shortstop, very good hitter, hitting 3rd in that order. Does well against left-handed pitching. So he's another guy that's in play. Next game we have is Cincinnati at Texas. Anthony DeSclafani pitching for Cincinnati. This is the 3rd start of 2016 for him. He's been giving up a ton of hits, really got knocked around, chased out of that game before the 3rd inning in his last start. The first start, he was very lucky, gave up a ton of hits, ton of base runners, and got away with only 1 run. So I do think Texas is going to get some runs here against them. The left-handed bats are the guys I really want to look at, but even some of the righties are in play. You know, Sin-Soo Choo is back. He's leading off, 390 WOBA, 204 ISO score for him. Nomar Mazara, one of my favorite young players in all of baseball, 372 WOBA, 209 for him against right-handed pitching. He's been hitting in the 3-hole, so I like those 2 guys pretty cheap up on top of the order. Mitch Moreland, Rougned Odor, 2 left-handed bats that you can use against DeSclafani. They got some upside. You know, you can even go to the righties, guys like Jurickson Profar, Adrian Beltre. You know, I think all these guys are in play here against DeSclafani. I'm not looking for him to have a very good start at all. On the other side of this game, we got Colby Lewis, the righty, and he's been pretty solid. You know, left-handed bats actually have a higher average against them. He has a high fly ball rate that he's given up as well, but he hasn't really gotten lit up. He's not somebody that tends to get lit up for 8 or 9 runs. Although I don't think he's a very good pitcher. I mean, he's going to give up 3 to 5 runs every game. He's not going to shut anybody down, but he's also not going to get lit up by anybody. So, there's a little bit of a balancing act there. Joey Votto's a guy that I'm going to be looking at. 407 WOBA, 227 ISO against right-handed pitching for me. I also really like the power of a guy like Adam Duvall. 374 WOBA, 361 ISO. That 361 ISO number is huge. You don't see a lot of ISO numbers that high. That's like reserved for a big-time power hitter, and that's basically what he's been this year. I think he's got 16 or 17 home runs, something crazy like that. And that's actually his profile. Even when he was on San Francisco, he was a guy that they called, he was a one-swing game changer. So, he's definitely been known as a home run hitter even when he was in the minors. Next game we're going to talk about, we got St. Louis Cardinals at the Chicago Cubs. Adam Wainwright's on the mound again, and this guy's very tilting to me. He's starting to get good. The curveball's starting to work for him. He's starting to get it over. He's starting to get some strikes. Left-handed bats have always been the way you kind of wanted to go after him. So a guy like Anthony Rizzo makes some sense. 397 WOBA, 270 ISO against right-handed pitching. Rizzo's 10 of 33 lifetime with a home run against Wainwright, so we have seen it in his past. The only other guy who really kind of profiles well for me is Ben Zobrist. Zobrist, 351 WOBA, 174 ISO, 3 of 8 lifetime against Wainwright. I hate to say it, but I think this could actually be a pretty decent spot here for Wainwright. I don't know if he's somebody that I'd be willing to roll out in cash against the Chicago Cubs, but he does make a little bit of sense at his, cheap price in tournaments. I mean, he's only like 72, 73. He's been putting up 20-plus fantasy points in his last couple games. And let's face it, I mean, when Wainwright is on, we know this is a guy that can go deep into games, give us 7, 8 innings, strike out 6 or 7 batters, limit it to 1, maybe 2, 3 hits, keep them down to 1 or 2 runs. And that would be more than 20-something fantasy points. If he gets the win, he can get you up to 30. So there's definitely some upside using him today. At the same point in time, though, you're challenging one of the better offenses in the league. But again, the Chicago Cubs also have a bunch of guys that are banged up. They brought up the young catcher. The lineup that you're going to see from the Cubs is not their A-plus top of the order, number 1 lineup out there. So, there's an argument to be made on both sides, I guess. On the other side of the game, we got Jason Hamill. Now, Jason Hamill's been good this year, too. Left-handed bats are the ones that have a higher average against them. So Matt Carpenter, definitely somebody I want. Leadoff batter on top of the order, 405 WOBA, 262 ISO. Brandon Moss, he homered yesterday for me. That was a good call that we made. Matt Adams, another guy, the left-handed stick. I want all these left-handed sticks on the Cardinals. Those are the guys that I want to try to attack Hamels with. Hamels has been tough on the righties. The left-handers is definitely the way to go. Next game, we got the Angels against Houston. This was a high-scoring game yesterday. We got McHugh pitching for Houston. Left-handed bats have about a 300 batting average against them this year, but normally he's a reverse splits guy. The last couple of years, the right-handed bats have been the way to hit him. So really, Mike Trout is the only guy that stands out to me on the Angels against, any kind of right-handed pitching. 412 WOBA for him, 285 ISO. I think he's in a really good spot. They don't have anybody else in this team that has over a 348 WOBA against right-handed pitching. If you want to use guys like, you're looking at guys like Escobar and Petit and Giavotella. I mean, none of these guys are really anybody that's going to excite me. Pujols is a shell of his former self, so he's not really worth it to go in there. Cole Calhoun is not a horrible bat if you want to look that way for a lefty, but, for me, it's basically Trout and nothing else on this team. On the other side of this game, we got Hector Santiago pitching, the lefty. Right-handed bats, higher average against them, very high fly ball rate. He does give up a lot of home runs, especially to right-handed bats. So you look at the top of that Houston order, you got, however they decide to stack them up, George Springer, 400, 200 WOBA ISO guy against left-handed pitching. Jose Altuve, big 400-plus WOBA guy against left-handed pitching. Carlos Correa, 360 WOBA, 200 ISO score against left-handed pitching. The guys with the home run upside against left-handed pitchers are the guys that I want up there towards the top of the order. I also think you can include a guy like Marwin Gonzalez, who they've been batting up in like the 2-hole. Maybe a guy like Danny Worth for min price if he's still that cheap. He's a prospect that they have that's, another big right-handed bat that could be in the lineup there. I like all the right-handed bats that they have to throw against Hector Santiago, especially guys with power. Santiago is prone to giving up the home run every now and then. The game is in Houston, great hitters ballpark. So I do think some of these Houston guys are going to be very, popular, but I also think that they're worth it to throw them in your lineup, especially Correa, who's finally starting to hit again. Next game we can talk about Philly at Minnesota. Aaron Nola's on the mound for Philly, and 2 or 3 games ago, I was taking this guy almost every time he stepped out on the mound. He has strikeout upside. He was really, really good, but his last 2 starts, he's been absolutely horrible. Now, I know Minnesota's not great against right-handed pitching, so, you're basically trying to figure out here, is Nola's bad starts, going to be what trumps the fact that Minnesota doesn't hit right-handed pitching well, or, vice versa. When you're looking at that Minnesota lineup, like I said, there aren't a lot of guys that stand out. I mean, Robbie Grossman probably has the best WOBA ISO combination, 362 and 221 since the start of last season. Robbie Grossman's not really a bat that, puts fear into your hearts. But like I said, Nola hasn't been all that great. So he's somebody you can look at. Eduardo Nunez makes a little bit of sense, 343, 119. Byung-Ho Park, who's been dropped in the order, has been struggling a little bit, but he does have that home run upside. So he could be somebody else that you decide to throw in there. I mean, like I said, Nola has been struggling a little bit, and if this was a good matchup, if I could find some bats that I really wanted to take against them, I would. But these Minnesota guys just, I don't know, I just don't see a lot of upside with them. So I think that if you're going to do anything, you stack them up, hoping that Nola has another horrible game and, maybe something's wrong with him, and that's why he's not pitching well. But, I mean, if you're looking for one-offs on this Minnesota team, I don't really see any that, jump out the page as guys that I have to have on my rosters today. On the other side of this game, you got Tyler Duffy. Duffy's given up 4+ runs in his last 6 starts. So this is definitely somebody you want to pick on. Lefty and right-handed bats are both hitting over 300 against them. Again, same problem you have with Philly, though. Who do you really want on this Philly team? Odubel Herrera has probably been their best bat. Lefty hitting on top of the order, 354 WOBA for him. Odubel, definitely somebody I could see myself using. But after that, I mean, you go to Mikael Franco. He's been so cold, they dropped him down to 7th in the order. Tommy Joseph, I guess, is a guy with upside, but, we like Tommy Joseph better against left-handed pitching, not so much against right-handed pitching. Whoever they're going to be rolling in there in between Odubel and the big bats, is it going to be, Cesar Hernandez today? Is it going to be Andres Blanco? Is it going to be Freddie Galvis? I mean, any of these guys could make cheap salary savers if you needed them, but none of them are really instilling a lot of confidence in me that they're going to be one of the top scorers on the day. So, again, Duffy, a guy I would like to pick on, but I just don't see too many bats that I'm able to pick on with, really outside of Odubel Herrera, who's probably my favorite. Next game up, we got Milwaukee at Oakland. Slipping Jimmy Nelson on the mound. Tough on right-handed bats, left-handed bats hitting them well. You look at that Oakland team, not really a lot of left-handed bats until they get Josh Reddick back. You basically just Stephen Vogt hitting in the 3-hole, 344 WOBA, 193 ISO. Pretty decent catcher option if you're looking for one there. Outside of him, you got to go to the right-handed bats. Valencia, Chris Davis have been the only other 2 guys doing damage. And like we said, Nelson is very tough on right-handed bats. Lefty's really how you want to attack them. So Oakland definitely not a team that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to today. The other side of this game, we got Sonny Gray. And, I mean, he's normally a guy that's like a 220 batting average to right and left-handed bats, but not this year. This year, right-handed bats have really been knocking him around. Like we talked about it before. I mean, he wasn't right for a couple starts, took a little time off, has come back now, looked a lot better since he came back. But, I still don't think he's a guy that's lights out. Does he have the ability to be? Yes. Is he going to be a great start? He's cheap as hell today, but he's also a guy that never really has big strikeout numbers. So what you got to hope for with Gray is that he goes deep into the game and doesn't give up a ton of hits. Like I said, the right-handed bats have been knocking him around this year. So do you want guys like Lucroy or Braun or Chris Carter? I mean, they make more sense against Sonny Gray now than they used to in the past. Jonathan Villar, the switch-hitting leadoff man, he's somebody that I like because I know he can get some hits. He can get on base for you, and, that's usually a pretty solid situation if you can see that happen. Last game we're going to talk about here, we got Washington Nationals going up against the LA Dodgers. Scott Kazmir on the mound for the Dodgers. Left-handed bat, right-handers hitting 242 against them. 9 home runs in 51 innings, so decent home run numbers against them. There are some guys that, on this Washington team that I think can give them trouble. Zimmerman, 388 WOBA, 319 ISO. Jason Worth, 384 WOBA, 290 ISO for him. Even Bryce Harper, very good in lefty-on-lefty matchups, 396 WOBA, 224 ISO. Anthony Rendon, 358 WOBA against left-handed pitching. Like I said, this Washington team hits left-handed pitching pretty well. So I don't think this is an easy spot here for Kazmir. On the other side of the game, I don't know if they're going to put Strasburg in now after they scratched him yesterday with, whatever the heck happened. Basically, he doesn't like pitching in the heat, so it was too hot, and they wound up scratching him. Tanner Roark is scheduled to start, which is something else that is a little bit concerning to me. Is the guy went to San Diego State, so when did he decide that he didn't like pitching in the heat? Because pitched all his home games in the heat in college, so just a little bit interesting there. Tanner Roark, anyway, is the guy who's slated to be on the mound here. 2014, 2015, left-handed bats had a higher average against them. This year in 2016, right-handed bats are hitting a higher average against them. So he's a reverse splits guy this year. I still think I'd rather attack him with the lefties, but, you can use some of the righties on this Dodgers team. Justin Turner hitting in the 3-hole is somebody who's starting to heat up. 363 WOBA, 197 ISO for him. Very good in righty-on-righty situations. So I don't mind using him against Roark. I love Seager. Corey Seager looked really good yesterday. Stroked a couple doubles. Even the outs that he made were like 370 feet to the warning track. So, he's hitting the ball really well. 382 WOBA, 224 ISO. And honestly, the kid just loves playing baseball. Like, you can see the smile on his face every time he gets a hit when he's up there. And, as a guy who loves baseball, that's something that I like to see. So I'm always rooting for that kid too. Trace Thompson, another guy who's been doing really well lately. Another righty-on-righty situation, which, like we said, Roark has struggled with this year. He's 365, 224 ISO against right-handed pitching this year. So those are some pretty solid numbers out of Trace as well. So if you find him in like the 5-hole of that order, I think he's somebody else you can look at. Jock Peterson, last guy I want to mention, mostly because he's got 5 home runs in his last 7 starts, and he's got a lot of power upside. So he's another guy that I think you can look at, as a one-swing kind of guy against Roark. Roark has been pretty solid, so I don't think he's a guy that you want to stack a ton of bats up against. But there are a couple guys that are in a pretty good spot here that I think you can use against them. And that wraps it up for our Benny's Bats video here at rotocurve.com. Went through all 15 games on the slate. Big slate tonight. A lot of big tournaments out there. So hopefully some of you guys can take some of this information that we talked about today and go make some money. Thank you for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.